The Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast, starts now.
Well, welcome everybody to another Liverpool Reaction, an American LFC podcast episode. I'm joined by my co-host, Coach Ralph. Well, Coach, wow, smash and grab. Definitely not the way we saw this game going, but PSG really put in a good performance and are incredibly unlucky.
Well, from a Liverpool perspective, we certainly can't be unhappy with the way things transpired. With, as you say, a smash and grab win against PSG. For me, the thing that wasn't a surprise was how good PSG were. Because even though they started the campaign in Europe iffy, like to put it mildly, they have certainly built up a head of steam, both in Europe and, of course, domestically, as they usually do. And they've got a tremendous forward line.
Yeah, I knew they were good for sure, but that was a very, very good performance. And without Allison, obviously man of the match, 10 out of 10, this game easily could have been 4-5-1 in favor of PSG. That's how good they played.
Right. And I think the other thing that was a factor was something that I mentioned in our preview, which is they have a great manager, Luis Enrique. In many respects, he flies under the radar compared to other managers. And I just feel he's very good at organizing a team, getting them to play well together. And PSG played well, not just in terms of the ball, but in terms of their pressuring, because Liverpool just couldn't get the ball forward on any kind of consistent basis. And that's been one of the Reds' great strengths this season. So it was a very good all-round performance, I suppose, with the one caveat, which is they didn't take their chances. I mean, like, they were unlucky on a couple of occasions in the first half, but ultimately, I always feel that if a team doesn't take the chances, then they can't blame anybody else except themselves.
Yeah, I don't know if it's them taking their chances or just Superman being in goal. That was, some of those saves were full stretch, fingertips. It was like what we used to do to teams under Klopp that they were doing to us, but just with no end product because the goalie was in just a rich vein of form for those 90 minutes.
True. I mean, Allison, everybody, like, the internet is full of it today about just how good he was, and I'm not going to take anything away from his performance. It was fantastic. But if you look at some of the chances they missed, like that Neves chance early on, that's
the one that went over the goal.
Yeah, he kind of hit it into the ground, went over. For a player of his ability and at that level and the way he was set up, that isn't a difficult opportunity. Allison was brilliant. I think they were unlucky with the goal. I'll just call him the Georgian boy because I'm difficult with this. He's a fantastic player. I know a couple of seasons back with Napoli, he gave us all kinds of problems, and it was the same last night. And whilst I've just praised Luis Enrique, I should also thank him because he took him off in the second half. But having said that, they've got a lot of quality on their bench too. But he's a fantastic player, and the goal he scored was a tremendous one, and one of those ones that if Liverpool had scored it, I would be upset because of these silly VAR rules. Which, when you see it, I didn't think he was offside.
Yeah, it was his heel that was offside. It was
and then
so marginal.
They look at it, it's very forensic. It's kind of down to millimeters and inches, and that to me is not what VAR is there for. It ruins the game. So So yeah, I think Liverpool were fortunate there, and I think they were a little bit fortunate with the Canate incident as well.
Yeah.
It wasn't a penalty because he was just outside the area, but it looked like a foul to me. And if it's a foul, he's the last man, and that's a red card. So there were a couple of times when the Reds were fortunate. Allison played great. But ultimately, PSG, whilst they put in a tremendous performance, they just didn't make it count, and they can only look at themselves. Like that's how I see it very much.
Yeah. It seemed tactically that, at least early on in the game, that Van Dijk was taking the goal kicks. I mean, he usually does, and just dinks it back to Becker, to Allison. But for some reason, it looked like they were trying to skip over the midfield, because PSG's defenders were one-on-one with Mo, Jota, and Luis Diaz. But for some reason, they just outmuscled us to the ball. We're winning the ball back. To be fair, in the second half, we were better. We had some chances, some opportunities at least to break. It just didn't materialize. And then finally, Mo Salah comes off, Harvey Elliott comes on, 47 seconds, and he finishes a Mo type of goal to win the game.
Right. Well, I think you're exactly correct in terms of Liverpool did a little bit better in the second half, and I thought that later in the game there were just a few signs PSG were running out of ideas. I think that's true,
Yeah.
and so you have to credit Liverpool for defending well. I thought the back four all played extremely well, besides Allison. And I think overall that you have to credit the team for their resilience, because under such concerted pressure, and I think that we saw Manchester City buckle under it, didn't buckle. And they all played their part. Well, you can say that the goalkeeper saved them, but isn't that what the goalkeeper's there to do? And I can never remember a game where Allison has been so busy, and I can think of games where he's made a big save at a critical time, but he made several saves here because that's what the game dictated.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
I think that you've got to credit the team from that perspective, because they were taking a battering, but but they didn't fold.
Kind of reminds me of that Tim Howard World Cup game. I forget the opponent, but he was all over the place making saves. It was a very similar type of performance from Allison.
Right. Yeah. It was I think it was against Ghana that, and he made a world record number of saves in the game. So I guess there were some similarities because Allison was really called upon to do his job. But I think the substitutions that Liverpool made, they all seem to, help the flow of the game. Because first of all, we had Jones and Nunes, and Nunes, who obviously has been in the newspapers and all over the internet of late for reasons probably he would not prefer. Don't know how good his English is these days, but anyway, so I thought he had some energy up front, and he certainly had presence.
Yeah.
And I thought he showed great composure. First of all, he battled to win the ball. And then one part of his game that people forget is he's pretty good at setting up players.
Yeah.
I mean, like he did that against Arsenal, for example, as well. The equalizing goal, was a nifty little pass to Salah. This time it was to Elliott. And that led to the winning goal. But besides Nunes, I think Jones did really well in midfield. I was kind of surprised, and we talked about this pre-game, and with hindsight, I'm kind of surprised he didn't go with the setup that he had against Manchester City. Because maybe if he had more men in the midfield, that might have helped a little bit. But anyway, I guess in another sense, because of the result, it doesn't matter now. So I thought Jones did extremely well because he holds the ball and he doesn't always give the ball away. And I think that that's what Liverpool needed at that point. Endo came on, and as always, Mr. Reliable did a job. And of course, Harvey Elliott comes on, and first touch he scores. And I think one of the big reflections, Donnarumma is rated to be one of the top goalkeepers around. I mean, Elliott did everything right. I think Donnarumma will probably feel that he should have saved it, though. I think there's no question about that.
Yeah, he got a hand on it. Coach, it was a good point about Darwin. In the first half, as I was watching the game, it just felt like we were getting out-muscled on the long balls. And I was texting my friends. I said, I strangely think this is a Darwin game. And I couldn't really kind of verbalize why. But when he came on, the physicality of him really knocked PSG back a little bit. And like you said, he did a great job winning the ball for the goal, and a beautiful layoff pass that we've seen him, pass to Mo many times. And this time it was just Harvey. And yeah, you're right. Donnarumma got his hand on it. Probably could have saved it. I thought he did. So when I was watching it live, I saw him get his hand on it, and I was like, oh. And then all of a sudden, the net kind of bulged a little bit on the side, and I was like, oh, that went in.
Right. I mean, but if you contrast what was happening a lot in the second half was as Liverpool improved a little bit, most of PSG's opportunities were from distance, and everything that Salah saved, he was very good at deflecting them wide. And I think you could put a good argument up that Donnarumma wasn't strong enough in terms of his save there, because whilst he got a hand to it, he didn't really push it away. Whereas at the other end of the field, Allison showed he was very adept at that.
Yeah, we've been saying for years that he's the best goalie in the world. And I mean, not just you and I mean, it's, recognized. And a performance like that, in Europe against a team that was playing very well in Paris. What else can you say about the guy? I mean, clearly a number one in the world, clearly huge game, clearly man of the match. Without him, or without that kind of performance from any goalie, I mean, this guy looks a lot different. You did mention the Konate incident. I don't understand really how this works with VAR, and just the commentators made a comment that it wasn't enough to overturn the original decision. I just don't understand what it's there for. If there, I would have been upset that he got sent off, but from a fan standpoint. But if I was a neutral, I would have said that's probably deserved. So very strange that happened.
Oh, right. I mean, but having seen a few things online since then, you've got Liverpool fans saying, well, it was a red, or it could have been called a red. And I've seen several neutral fans saying, well, it wasn't enough for a red. So I guess I thought he was lucky to escape with it, to be honest with you. I thought he was lucky. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you get calls for you, get calls against you. I mean, like, who knows what will happen in the return leg now, because it's going to be a close game still. I mean, you've seen the power that they have up front. And now
Dembele was unbelievable.
Yeah, the onus will be on Liverpool now to go forward. So Dembele, Barcola, and the Georgian boy now will all have a lot more space to operate in. And yeah, I mean, it's still going to be a tricky tie. And I saw that the manager was talking about that Liverpool will need the crowd, and I think they will.
Yeah.
But I think they'll also need the midfield to exert themselves more, for sure.
I was just going to ask you tactically, from a PSG standpoint, their wings are so strong, and those are the weakest points of our defense. You know, we can handle a center forward because of Van Dijk and Kanate are very good, and I can't really see a center forward that would outclass both of them. However, you know, Trent's defensive abilities and Robo's defense abilities are the weakest of the bunch, and the fact that they have two guys in the Georgian boy and Barcola just flying down the wings, it's going to cause problems. So tactically, you have to go double pivot, right? And have those guys kind of sit in front of the defense and make sure that they're helping out, right? I mean, how else tactically would you address a situation like that?
Well, I mean, obviously we're talking from a defensive point of view, but to quote the cliche, the best form of defense is offense. So I mean, taking the game to PSG, I think, is one way. I mean, like, you could go for a Manchester City lineup, I suppose, but I think you're right when you've kind of identified Nunes as posing more problems to them centrally. And for me, Jota, I mean, like, Jota's a great finisher, as we've talked about. I've always thought he was a very good impact sub. I'm not sure he always does quite so well when he's starting the game.
Yeah.
I think he's very effective coming off the bench because, you know, a lot of the pace has gone out of the game typically in the latter stages. And whilst he's a very good finisher and he's pretty mobile, you know, but he's not a speedster, you know, like a Nunes. I mean, like, Nunes has got pace. Salah's getting on, but he's still got pace. Diaz has got pace. Gakpo, when he's on the ball, is so powerful when he's running with it.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that Jota, whilst he might be the best finisher out of the bunch, just don't feel he has those physical and speed dimensions that the other Liverpool players possess.
When you look at the second leg, you mentioned Arne Slot talking about we're going to need the fans to create the hectic atmosphere to intimidate them, and you know, just to be a European night at Anfield. And when you look at just like a starting lineup, I think it makes sense now that you move Darwin in Jota's space, in Jota's place this game on Tuesday. I mean, the physicality, the you mentioned the pace, but I thought it was the like, people were bouncing off him. I mean, he was throwing his weight around in a really good way, where Jota, Diaz, and Mo are relatively smaller type of players. They are quick, but I thought Darwin changed the game, like I mentioned, and I think moving forward, Slot has to see that and say, okay, Darwin, if we're going to play over the top, Darwin's going to create a lot of problems, because not only can he run onto the ball, but he can bump them off the ball and you know, break away towards the goal with Mo and Luis Diaz flying down the wings with him.
Yeah, I think one thing that needs to be figured out here is they have a game which is in between against Southampton. So I think the PSG game will have taken a lot out of them. They don't have a game Sunday. You know, it's a Saturday game, and then it's Tuesday. So Liverpool are coming up to a very key week in terms of they have two home games where they're probably going to be favoured. And then, of course, they have the cup final against Newcastle at the end of the week. So I think from a planning perspective, there's some interesting things for the manager to consider. Does he put out a Plymouth Argyle type team against Southampton? I know most pundits and probably the majority of fans will say, well, Liverpool's shadow team should really beat Southampton. I'm not quite so sure it's as simple as that. Plus there are one or two injuries. So for example, I think ideally he would like to rest Trent. I think he would like to rest Trent. I think he has the option of doing that with Robertson, and I expect Tsimikas to start against Southampton. So he has Robertson then for the Champions League tie.
Yeah.
So like that's a consideration. So he could put Kwanzaa at right back, I suppose. I mean, I've always wondered why he hasn't put somebody like Endo as a fullback, but again, one or two players are out. One or two players need to be rested. So I don't have the answers. Let's hope that Arne Slot does, because, yeah, I mean, ideally, I suppose if Liverpool was to lose against Southampton because they put out a Plymouth level team and it doesn't work, they lose the game. I mean, it's not critical to them, but psychologically, then they have to consider, right, you've got PSG. Now PSG aren't out the tie. And if PSG were to win, I think they have enough ability to do that. So if they were to lose two games consecutively at home, then all of a sudden psychologically that makes it difficult or puts a little bit of pressure on them for the cup final. So, lots of things for the manager to consider, and I'll be very interested to see how he handles it all.
Yeah. Ideally, if Bradley was healthy, I think Trent definitely played more minutes than he was supposed to last night. And Bradley missing this kind of little stretch is unfortunate. Kwanzaa can fill in there, like you mentioned, but I mean, if Kwanzaa fills in and Tsimikas fills in for Robertson, it's going to be Konate and Virgil in the middle. And I guess from a center half standpoint, against Southampton, it should be a lot more controlled type of game where they can dictate the pace and slow things down when they want to, and move it around. So it'll be interesting to see. But from a midfield standpoint, Coach, is this a game for Endo? Is this a game for Jones? Is this a game for Harvey Elliott? How do you see that moving forward with Southampton?
I think all the players that you're talking about, I think they should all start. Endo, Jones, Elliott, Darwin Núñez. I think they should all start. So then I think the manager has to look at it. Again, as I said earlier, he has his chess pieces, as it were, and he's got to think how to play them and where to play them and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, there's Mo Salah. I mean, I know that a lot of people will look at the game and say, oh, well, you don't want certain players to pick up injuries like Van Dijk and Salah. I mean, Salah was pretty invisible against PSG in the first leg.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the situation where Salah's very orientated towards getting records. And so he won't want to miss the Southampton game because it's another opportunity to get goal involvements, both in terms of scoring and assisting. So, yeah, there's all these different things to consider. And I think we've got the right man at the helm to make the choices.
Yeah, Gakpo missing out too could be a problem. He's still dealing with that ankle injury. So he could miss the weekend. It would be nice to see him play 60, 70 minutes over the weekend against Southampton, but I'm not so sure that that'll be the case. Depending on the severity of the injury, though, it could be Diaz playing on the left and then saving Gakpo for the second leg against PSG, another big guy, strong guy, fast guy. And I could see that happening and how Gakpo would be more effective against PSG's tactics. Again, just like Darwin, physicality and speed.
Right. So again, we don't know the seriousness of the injury. Would he want him to get 15 minutes against Southampton as a sub? I don't know. If he's on the bench, then I think that might be in his thinking, just give him a run.
Mm-hmm.
Is it an injury that would prevent him, or it would make sense for him to start against PSG? Again, we just don't know what the injury is, or not just the injury, but how severe it is. So I think that these are things that are to be determined.
Yeah. But you agree with me, though, from a physicality standpoint, he would be effective against PSG?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, because the big thing is Gakpo is a big guy.
Big dude, yeah.
He's a big guy. He's got a big frame. And when he gets running, he's very, very powerful. And I feel if you were to compare him to Diaz, I mean, like Diaz is strong. And I think we saw that in the previous game where he gets the ball and he's kind of shaking off players left, right, and centre. But he's not powerful in the same way that Gakpo is. And it's to do with Gakpo's frame. He's really got a frame. And in some respects, I would say he's more purposeful than Diaz. I think that what Diaz brings to the table is his unpredictability.
Yeah.
So they might favour that left side position, but they have slightly different qualities that they offer the team.
Well, all things considered, 1-0 up, second leg at Anfield. Pretty good situation, especially when you watch the game and see what it could have been. And I'm just thinking now, as we're talking through this, I mean, we struggled with 11 men against PSG. Imagine if Konate did get that red card, what this tie could have looked like. I mean, it would have been like holding, like protecting the fort at all costs. I don't know how we would have, got on with 10 men, but sometimes that's a little bit more dangerous than with 11. But man, that was a key moment in the game, because I think that could have really flipped the script. Barcelona got a red card early in their game and held on and then scored to beat Benfica 1-0. So it was a tough game for sure, and it could have gone many different ways. And it was probably a 1% outcome to be the way it turned out, and we're just lucky that it did. And I do mean lucky. I mean, that was very fortunate. So, Coach, as we predict the Southampton game and the PSG game, do you think it's a 2-1 type of closer type of victory, a 2-0 type of game against Southampton? Something I anticipated being a lot more controlled, a lot more back to what we expect from this team.
Yeah, I think. Well, we talk about Slot's favoured score is 2-0. So I don't expect Liverpool to come out all guns firing against Southampton. I think it'll be about possession and then trying to pick their time and their moments and everything. So I think it's going to be that kind of a game, as they maybe rotate a little bit and then keep something in the tank for next Tuesday.
Yeah, I agree. When we look at next Tuesday, Anfield, European night, being on the front foot, or having at least the confidence and the what's the word I'm looking for? The onus to be on attack. I think that it's going to be a much different game on Tuesday. I just can't see PSG doing what they did at Parc des Princes at Anfield. I just can't see it. Do you agree with that, or do you think PSG is going to have a similar type of performance?
No, I don't think it's going to be quite the same performance, because I think Liverpool will, because it's the home game and just the occasion. PSG will be pushed back to some degree, but in a funny way, that could favour them because the three boys up front are all pacey and they're good one-on-one. So Liverpool's in a good position, but I think it's a game that's very much in the balance. I mean, even if I think that in some ways, if it had finished 0-0, 0-0, as we say in England, if it had finished 1-0 to PSG, I think we'd be pretty much saying the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it makes much difference. If PSG had got a 2 or 3 goal lead, I think that would be different. But thankfully they didn't. So yeah, Liverpool's in a good situation, but the tie is far from being over.
Yeah. Well, everybody, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Liverpool Reaction and American LC podcast. As always, Coach, thank you for your insight. Big 2 games coming across, even though it's Southampton. There could be rotation, as Coach and I believe will happen. And then a huge game on Tuesday against a team that really probably had the best performance throughout the Champions League day yesterday and Tuesday, but couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. Thank God to Allison Becker, and we're up 1-0. So very fascinating. And then, Coach, just a quick look ahead. We're not going to talk about it, but quick look ahead. You mentioned it earlier. Newcastle next weekend for the Carabao Cup final. There's been some interesting news out of Newcastle. Just real quick, that Lewis Hall is out for the season. Gordon got a red card this past week in the FA Cup game, so he's out, and Isak is a doubt as well. So pretty fortunate there as well. But let's we'll see how Isak's feeling later next week. But fun stretch of games. We're coming down to the home stretch, both in the Premier League and the Champions League. So we'll keep these videos coming to you, and those listening via podcast, thank you so much for listening. Please, folks, don't forget to subscribe. Would love to grow this channel and have Coach and I do a lot more of these things. We do have some plans for some future stuff, which I think you guys will find enjoyment out of. And till next time, we'll talk to you then. Thank you again for listening or watching, and take care, everybody.
Bye now.